I'm Dylan, 28. I fix things. Motorcycles, cars, anything with an engine that people have given up on. I live just outside Portland in a quiet neighborhood where you can still hear the rain hitting leaves instead of just pavement. My garage is nothing fancy. A converted warehouse space next to a used bookstore and a vintage clothing shop that seems to attract more browsers than buyers. I've been working here for 3 years now. After my engagement fell apart, I stopped chasing anything that required too much emotional maintenance, relationships included. I like my routine. I like knowing that if something's broken, I can probably fix it. But I guess that's the kind of certainty life likes to challenge. It started on a Wednesday morning around 8:30. I was rolling up the garage door when I noticed someone wrestling with a heavy wooden sign outside the vintage shop. At first, I figured it was just another employee. She had her auburn hair twisted into a loose braid, wore a faded denim jacket over what looked like a sundress, and boots that had clearly seen some adventures. I walked over without really thinking about it. "Need a hand with that?" I called out. She looked up, slightly out of breath, and gave me a grateful smile. "That would actually be amazing," she said. I thought I could handle it solo, but apparently Gravity has other plans. "Gravity's undefeated," I said, grabbing one end of the sign. "Where's this going?" "Right here by the door. I'm trying to advertise our new hours." She paused as we positioned it. "I'm Sage, by the way. I just started managing this place last week." "Dylan, I run the garage next door." I gestured toward my shop. "Welcome to the neighborhood." That was how it began. Simple, practical, two people helping each other with a basic problem. From then on, I'd see her through my garage door opening, arranging vintage jewelry in the window display, helping customers find the perfect retro jacket, always moving with this purposeful energy that made the whole block feel more alive. We didn't talk much at first, just waves and nods, the kind of acknowledgments neighbors give each other when they're still figuring out the boundaries. A few days later, we ended up at the same food truck during lunch. She was ahead of me in line, studying the menu like it contained the secrets of the universe. When she reached for her wallet, I found myself saying, "Let me get yours too. Consider it a belated welcome to the block." She turned around, eyebrows raised. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but the tacos here are life-changing and everyone deserves to experience that without financial stress." She laughed, a genuine sound that made something in my chest relax. "In that case, I accept. But I'm buying coffee next time." "Deal." By the second week, we had developed an easy rhythm. Nothing scheduled or formal, just the natural synchronization of people who work next to each other. She'd wave from her doorway when I was working on a particularly stubborn engine. I'd hold packages for her when delivery drivers came by during her lunch breaks. Small gestures that made the daily routine feel less solitary. One afternoon, I was taking a break outside when I saw her sitting on the front steps of her shop holding what looked like a letter. The usual energy was gone from her posture. She looked deflated, like someone had just told her that gravity was getting stronger. I walked over, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. "Everything okay?" She looked up, and I could see she'd been crying recently. "Just some mail I wasn't expecting," she said, folding the letter carefully. "My ex-fiancé finally sent the ring back. It took him 6 months, but I guess better late than never." I sat down on the step next to her, leaving enough space so she wouldn't feel crowded. "That must be complicated." "It should feel like closure, right?" She stared at the envelope in her hands. "But mostly, it just feels like proof that I spent 2 years planning a future with someone who was never really there." I knew that feeling intimately, but I didn't say so immediately. Sometimes people need space to express their thoughts without someone immediately jumping in with their own experience. "You want to talk about it?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. "He said he loved me, but he never really saw me. Does that make sense? Like, he loved the idea of having a fiancé, but he never paid attention to who I actually was." "That makes perfect sense," I said. "I went through something similar. Different details, same feeling of being invisible to someone who was supposed to know you best." She looked at me with surprise. "Really? Really? Turns out some people are better at loving concepts than they are at loving actual human beings." We sat there for a while, not saying much, just listening to the sounds of the neighborhood around us. Finally, she stood up and brushed off her dress. "Thanks for sitting with me," she said. "I should probably get back to work." "Of course. And Sage, for what it's worth, anyone who couldn't see you clearly was missing out on something pretty remarkable." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "That's kind of you to say." After that day, our conversations became deeper, not constantly heavy, but more honest. We talked about our work, our families, the books we were reading, the places we wanted to travel. She told me about growing up in small-town Oregon, how she'd studied art history but ended up in retail because she loved helping people find things that made them feel beautiful. I told her about learning mechanics from my grandfather, how I'd originally planned to be an engineer but discovered I preferred working with my hands. One evening, about a month after we'd first met, I was closing up the garage when she knocked on the side door. She was holding a container that smelled incredible. "I made way too much chili," she said. "Thought you might want some." I looked at the container, then back at her. "This feels like a very elaborate excuse to hang out with me." She grinned. "Maybe it is. Is that okay?" "More than okay." We ate sitting on crates in my garage, surrounded by motorcycle parts and the smell of motor oil. She asked about the bike I was restoring, a 1978 Honda that had been sitting in pieces for 6 months. I showed her the engine I'd been rebuilding, explaining how each component worked together to create motion. "It's like a puzzle," she said, picking up a small gear and examining it. "Every piece has to be exactly right for the whole thing to function." "Exactly. And when something breaks, you have to figure out whether to repair it or replace it entirely." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's kind of a metaphor for everything, isn't it?" "Yeah, I guess it is." We talked until almost 10 that night. When she finally left, I found myself looking forward to seeing her the next day in a way that had nothing to do with neighborly politeness. The following weekend, we both ended up volunteering at a community cleanup event in the park a few blocks away. Completely unplanned. We just both happened to care about the neighborhood and show up with trash bags and work gloves. We spent the morning picking up litter and pulling invasive weeds, working side by side without needing to coordinate our efforts. During a break, we were sitting on a picnic table, sharing a thermos of coffee she'd brought. The sun was filtering through the trees, and she had dirt smudged on her cheek from wrestling with a particularly stubborn blackberry bush. "You know," I said, "I never expected to enjoy manual labor this much." "It's satisfying," she agreed, "taking something messy and making it better. Plus, the company doesn't hurt." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "No, it doesn't." There was something in her voice, a warmth that went beyond casual friendship. For a moment, we just looked at each other, and I felt that familiar flutter of possibility that I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. "Sage," I started, then stopped myself. Whatever I was about to say felt too big for a park bench during a volunteer event. "What?" she asked softly. "Nothing. Just, this is nice. Spending time with you." "Yeah, it is." The moment passed, but something had shifted. Over the next few weeks, our interactions carried an undercurrent of awareness that hadn't been there before. Conversations lasted longer. Casual touches, her hand on my arm when she laughed, my fingers brushing hers when we both reached for the same tool, seemed to linger. We were both dancing around something that felt significant but unspoken. It all came to a head on a Thursday evening in late October. I was working late on a vintage Mustang, trying to diagnose an electrical problem that had been driving me crazy for days. The garage door was open, letting in the cool evening air when Sage appeared in the doorway. "Still working?" she asked. "This car is personally offending me," I said, not looking up from the engine. "I've checked everything twice, and I can't figure out why the ignition system keeps failing." "Maybe it just needs a break," she said, walking closer. "Sometimes, when I can't solve a problem, stepping away for a bit helps me see it differently." I straightened up and really looked at her. She was wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders. There was something different about her expression, more open, more intentional. "You're probably right," I said. "I've been staring at this engine for 3 hours. At this point, I'm probably missing something obvious." "What would help you relax?" she asked. The question felt loaded with possibility. "Honestly, just talking to you. You have this way of making everything feel less complicated." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with the autumn air. "Dylan, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Are we just friends?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. I set down the wrench I'd been holding and turned to face her fully. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think we stopped being just friends weeks ago, but I also think we're both scared to say it out loud." She was right, and we both knew it. I'd been attracted to her since the day we met, but I'd also been terrified of complicating something that felt good and stable. After my engagement ended, I convinced myself that I was better off keeping things simple. "I don't want to mess this up," I said. "What we have works. It's easy and comfortable, and I don't want to risk losing that." "But what if it could be even better?" she asked. "What if taking the risk is worth it?" I looked at her standing there in my garage, surrounded by tools and motorcycle parts, looking more beautiful than anyone had a right to look in that setting. The way she was watching me, with hope and nervousness and something deeper than casual interest, made my heart race. "You keep looking at me like that," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I'll have to ask you out." I meant it as a joke, a way to acknowledge the tension without committing to anything. But Sage didn't laugh. She didn't smile or deflect or change the subject. She just looked straight at me and said, "What's stopping you?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. All the reasons I'd been giving myself for keeping our relationship platonic, the fear of complication, the comfort of friendship, the safety of not risking rejection, suddenly seemed less important than the possibility of something real. "Nothing," I said. realizing as I said it that it was true. Absolutely nothing. So ask me. I took a deep breath. Sage, would you like to go out with me? On an actual date, not just neighboring and sharing food and pretending we don't think about each other more than we should? Her smile was radiant. I was wondering when you'd get around to that. Yes, Dylan, I would very much like to go out with you. Really? Really, I've been waiting for you to ask for weeks. Why didn't you just ask me? Because sometimes it's nice to be pursued. And because I could tell you needed to work up to it in your own time. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. You're pretty smart, you know that? I've been told. I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. So what happens now? Now you plan a date. Something thoughtful but not overwhelming. Something that lets us figure out if this thing between us is as good as it feels like it could be. Any requests? Surprise me. But maybe somewhere we can actually talk without being surrounded by engine parts. I can make that happen. She reached up and touched my cheek, her fingers cool against my skin. Good, because I really want to see where this goes. Me too. The Friday, I picked her up at 7 for dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, but the kind of place where the lighting was warm and the tables were far enough apart for real conversation. We talked for 3 hours, covering everything from childhood memories to travel dreams to the books that had shaped how we saw the world. I have a confession, she said over dessert. I've been hoping you'd ask me out since the day we first had lunch together. Why didn't you say anything? Because I liked the way we were getting to know each other, slowly, naturally, without pressure. I didn't want to rush it. But you were ready for it to become something more? I've been ready for weeks. I was just waiting for you to catch up. I reached across the table and took her hand. Well, I'm officially caught up now. Good, she said, intertwining our fingers, because I really like you, Dylan. Not just as a neighbor or a friend, but as someone I want to spend time with, someone I want to learn more about. I really like you too, more than I've liked anyone in a long time. So what happens next? Next, I walk you home and we see if you'll let me kiss you goodnight. I think I can arrange that. The walk back to her apartment was different from any of our previous evening strolls. There was an awareness between us now, an acknowledgement that we were moving into new territory. When we reached her front door, I turned to face her. This is new for me, I said, dating someone I already care about. Usually, I either know someone's attractive but don't know them as a person, or I know them well but there's no romantic spark. This is the first time both things have lined up. Same here, she said. It feels like we skipped some of the awkward getting-to-know-you phase and went straight to actually liking each other. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's exactly what I wanted. I cupped her face in my hands and kissed her, soft and tentative at first, then deeper when she responded by pulling me closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both smiling. So, she said, same time next week? Actually, I was thinking maybe tomorrow, if you're free. Eager, are we? Turns out I am. Is that too much? No, it's perfect. I don't want to wait a whole week to see you again either. The next several weeks unfolded like the best kind of slow burn. We went on real dates, dinner, movies, hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, browsing farmers markets on Saturday mornings. But we also kept the easy, everyday interaction that had drawn us together in the first place. She'd bring me coffee during my afternoon breaks. I'd help her rearrange displays in her shop. We'd text each other pictures of interesting things we saw during the day. I like how we're doing this, she told me one evening as we were walking through her neighborhood after dinner. We're not trying to reinvent everything. We're just adding romance to what was already working. You make it sound so simple, isn't it? We already know we enjoy each other's company. We already trust each other. The romantic part is just extra. Good extra, though. Very good extra. 2 months after our first official date, we were spending a lazy Sunday morning at her apartment. I was reading while she worked on a crossword puzzle, both of us comfortable in the kind of silence that only exists between people who don't need constant entertainment to enjoy each other's presence. Dylan, she said suddenly, I love you. I looked up from my book. She was watching me carefully, like she was gauging my reaction. You do? Yeah, is that okay? I set the book aside and moved closer to her on the couch. It's more than okay. I love you too. Really? Really. I've been wanting to say it for weeks, but I didn't want to rush things. When did you know? Honestly, I think I knew that night in the garage when you asked me what was stopping me. Not the words exactly, but the feeling. That sense of, oh, this is different. This matters. For me, it was our first real date. When you said you'd never dated someone you already cared about, that's when I realized this wasn't just attraction or compatibility. It was actual love. Well, so what happens now? Now we keep doing what we're doing, taking it day by day, building something real together. No rushing. No rushing, but also no holding back out of fear. I can live with that. 6 months later, we were planning our first vacation together, a long weekend in San Francisco that would be our first real test of how we functioned as a couple outside our comfortable Portland routine. We were both excited and slightly nervous, the way people get when they're about to find out if something good can become something great. You know what I love about us? Sage said one evening as we were going over travel plans. What? We never had that dramatic moment where everything changed overnight. We just gradually became more ourselves around each other until being together felt inevitable. Is that romantic enough for you? It's exactly romantic enough. I don't need fireworks, Dylan. I need someone who sees me clearly and chooses me anyway. Someone who makes ordinary moments feel special just by being there. You have that. I know I do, and I'm not taking it for granted. A year after that first conversation in my garage, we moved in together. Not because we felt pressured to take the next step, but because we'd reached a point where maintaining separate apartments felt artificial. We'd been spending most of our time together anyway, and combining our lives felt like a natural progression rather than a big leap. Remember when you joked about asking me out? She said one evening as we were unpacking boxes in our shared living room. I remember you calling my bluff. Best decision I ever made. Second best. What was the first? Moving next door to your shop. Everything good that's happened since then started with that coincidence. You think it was really a coincidence? What do you mean? I don't know. Sometimes I think some things are meant to happen, like maybe we were always going to find each other one way or another. You believe in fate? I believe in paying attention to good things when they show up. And you, Dylan Martinez, are definitely a good thing. So are you, Sage Chen. The best thing, actually. 2 years later, on a Thursday evening in late October, I was working in our shared garage space when she appeared in the doorway, just like she had that first night when everything changed. Still working? She asked, echoing her words from years before. Just finishing up, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. What's up? Nothing specific, just wanted to see you. You see me every day. I know, but I still like looking at you. Well, if you keep looking at me like that, I said, grinning at her, I'll have to ask you to marry me. She raised an eyebrow. What's stopping you? This time, I was ready for her response. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the ring I'd been carrying around for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Absolutely nothing, I said, dropping to one knee right there in our garage. Sage, will you marry me? You planned this, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. I've been planning this since the day I met you. I just didn't know it yet. Yes, she said, pulling me to my feet so she could kiss me. Yes, obviously, yes. Really? Really. I've been waiting for you to ask for months. Why didn't you just ask me? Because, she said, echoing her words from that first night, sometimes it's nice to be pursued. And because I knew you'd find the perfect moment when you were ready. Was this the perfect moment? Dylan, every moment with you is perfect, but this is exactly right. So that's how it ended, or maybe how it finally began. No dramatic transformation, no sudden revelation, just two people who stopped being afraid of what they wanted long enough to reach for it together. We got married the following spring in her parents' backyard, surrounded by family and friends, and enough flowers to stock her vintage shop for a month. Sometimes people ask us how we knew, how we went from neighbors to friends to something permanent. The truth is, we didn't have a moment of knowing. We just had a series of choices, each one a little braver than the last, until choosing each other became the easiest thing in the world. And sometimes, late at night, when we're lying in bed talking about our days, she'll look at me with that same expression she had in the garage that first night, and I'll remember all over again what it felt like to realize that the best things in life happen when you stop protecting yourself long enough to let them in.